Welcome to this tutorial about rigging in Unreal Engine 5. I'm going to show you how I made this using a couple of free assets that you can get from Fab. One of them is the Dark Ruins set that you can see in the background. The other one is the skeleton here. And I've fully rigged the creature from mesh, adding a skeleton to it and a control rig, and then a little bit of animation. Don't judge me on that. It's previs animation and I'm not an animator. So this is just really designed to test it, make it move, maybe do some previs on that side of things. But the rigging is something by the end of this, you'll understand how to take a mesh, add a skeleton to it, and a control rig. So the tutorial is probably aimed more at an intermediate user of Unreal Engine. So it's good if you know a little bit of Unreal Engine before, but if you don't, try and follow along anyway. You'll probably learn a ton, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is download the Dark Ruins Megascan sample. So go to fab.com, type in Dark Ruins, and you will find this project right here. So you type in Dark Ruins into the search, it should pop up. Now you want to download this. You'll probably have to sign in using your account, use your Epic account, download it, and then what you're going to want to do is go to the Epic launcher and go to your library, and then scroll all the way down to your library here and search for Dark Ruins. Then you want to create the project. I'm not going to go into that in depth because this is more of a rigging tutorial, but create the project. You will need to wait for a while because it's going to compile itself. It's going to do all sorts of static mesh prep. So it will take a while to open this new project. Just bear that in mind. And then once you're ready, you will want to find the area that we're in and find a good spot anyway, a nice place that you want to start doing your character work in. Next thing you want to do is grab the skeleton. So if you go to fab.com again, type skeleton into the search at the top there, and it should be this first one here. But if you also go to the right here and click on the little free checkbox, that shows you all the things that are free. If you click on the skeleton here, you will see the skeleton, and then you can click on download. If you go to download, grab the skeleton.zip. I would also grab the skeleton GLB and the USD file just in case, because you never know, those might work better. Okay, so you've downloaded your skeleton, and you can have a zip file something like this. I'm using WinRAR to unzip it, and I'm going to do extract. This pops up, just say no. And let's go take a look at the folder. So go into the source folder, and this file that we're going to use already has a skeleton in it, but we're going to replace it. So I also want to rename it because I realized that having a skeleton called skeleton and putting skeletons in it is very confusing. So from now on, we're going to call this guy Dave. No offense to anyone I know called Dave, but this is now the name of our character. And you can see this little preview of the GLB file in Windows, which is kind of cool. So first thing I want to do is take this file and drag it into the content browser over here. Okay, so now I've dragged that in there. It's going to give me these import options, and I'm just going to use the default options for now. So obviously different ways you can import things, but using the default GLTF import options there. It's now going to import the file and all the textures and do some reconstruction work. And as I said, this file already has a skeleton in it, but we're going to recreate the skeleton. And the whole point is because sometimes when you bring a character with a skeleton in, the skeleton doesn't work. Unreal doesn't like it. So you may want to recreate it. You may also have brought this thing in as just a mesh. It may have just been an OBJ or an FBX file. And in either case, we're going to show you how to strip away the skeleton, how to create a brand new skeleton for our character Dave. So as you can see, we've got all of our component parts now recreated in our content browser. We have the 3 component parts for a skeletal mesh. We have our skeletal mesh, our physics asset, and our skeleton. We also have a material instance, and we have the 3 textures. First thing I'm going to do is hit save all, Control-Shift-S, and that's going to make sure all those asterisks disappear and we get all of our assets on disk, just in case we crash or anything like that. So now we've got our skeletal mesh. We can double click on it and bring up Dave. There he is, our character with the skeleton in it as it arrived in the asset. So as I said, 2 different situations we might have. We might have a character that is just the mesh and no skeleton, or armature, whatever you want to call it. Unreal references this as a skeleton, the thing that you can see inside the mesh. So all of these points, these are what drives the mesh. So for Dave here, he came in with a skeleton, and we want to remove it because let's say it didn't work, or maybe it came in with no skeleton. Either way, we want to start with a clean static mesh, and this button at the top here allows us to do that. We're going to click on Make Static Mesh. We're going to browse to our folder that we're doing this tutorial in, and I'm going to hit Save. And that's now going to go off and prepare me a new asset, which is a static mesh that has no skeleton in it. Told me it was successful, so let's go have a look. And here he is. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rename it Dave. I'm going to put a prefix at the beginning, SM, for static mesh. And there we go. We have static mesh Dave. So we're ignoring all those files that we came in with. In fact, maybe for clarity, I will even just create a folder here called old, which is common practice when you've got old stuff lying around. And we'll shift select all of those old bits. We'll drag them in the folder there and we'll say move here. And then let's just do a quick save all again. So now we've got a clean start. We've got our Dave character here, the static mesh. First thing I want to do is create a skeleton in the mesh. And this is a static mesh, so it doesn't have a skeleton. So whether it arrived in this state or we just created it by stripping away the skeleton, we're going to right click on this, on Dave. We're going to go to convert to skeletal mesh. And this is what we do to create the basis of a new skeleton for a character. So once I've done this, I'm just going to use the defaults here. And you can see the defaults have the default prefixes already inserted for you, which is why we use those prefixes. And we're going to hit convert. Now what this is going to do is create the beginnings of our skeleton. So this first part of the tutorial, we are going to just take a static mesh and put a skeleton in it. This could be anything. It could be a dog, a tree branch, a statue. Any kind of static mesh will do. So as you can see, what this has done is created 2 new assets here. So we started with our static mesh, and we now have our SKM Dave, that's our skeletal mesh, and our SK Dave. So this character now has the constituent parts for a rigged character. So I'm going to double click on the skeletal mesh here. This is going to bring up the skeletal mesh editor. There it is. Now, first thing you want to make sure is if you don't see these options appearing up here to edit the skeleton, come up to Edit, Plugins, type in Skelly or Skeletal, and you just make sure you've got skeletal mesh editing tools enabled. As long as you do, it's on by default now, I think, but you should be good to go. Okay, so we've got our skeletal mesh, and as you can see, it's just a mesh at this point. So Dave is looking pretty basic. There's one joint at the base there. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that joint and I'm going to come over here to the left to my skeleton menu and hit Edit Skeleton. Now, this is going to launch the tools to be able to add and edit skeletons. And the skeleton is the name for the armature that you put inside the mesh again. So for Dave here, we're going to put a skeleton in Dave. We've already got one bone. That is our root bone. You can see at the top right here. That's our root bone, the basis of most skeletons. And what we're going to do is we're going to leave that root bone there, but we're just going to reset that to 0, 0, 0. So we're going to hit that little back arrow there, resets that bone to 0, 0, 0. And then because we've got root selected, we're now going to go to add at the top left here. That's going to add new joints to the skeleton. And the first joint we want to add is to the pelvis. So we're going to just click in the middle of the pelvis here. We're going to click on that point right there. And there we have it. You can always zero out the X value there if you want, just to be super neat and tidy. Make sure they're all being created on the 0 on the X-axis. So we should have them in a perfect straight line. So we've got the root, the pelvis, and now we're going to create a new joint. Because we've got add selected, we can just go in here and click on the places we want to add more joints. And because this type here is set to projection type within mesh, it's going to do something which was very tedious before in doing these kinds of things. It will add the joint at the midpoint of the mesh. So it will try and do its best to, wherever I'm clicking, add that new joint in the middle. As you can see, it's done a pretty good job there. So it's added it right in the middle of our hip. That's our hip joint. We're now going to come down here and add a knee joint, and we're going to add down here an ankle joint right there, and then we're going to add one in the ball of the foot right there, and then we're going to add one right at the end of the toe, and then we have one leg. So that leg is done, but up here, terrible names. Joint 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is something which you should never do when you're making polygons or joints, is just call them the default names. So as you go, do your work as you go. We're going to click on these and we're going to name them. So first joint is called pelvis. We're going to do all lowercase. So I'm going to say pelvis. I'm going to say hip underscore R, because we're using that convention for the right hand side of the character, underscore R, all lowercase. And use the exact names I'm using here, because the next part of the process that we're going to go through, the modular rig, will really rely on that, on you doing that properly. So and that I've already done wrong, so I'm going to backtrack now and say this is going to be called thigh. So the first one is called thigh, second one is called calf, underscore R, underscore R again because we're on the right hand side of the character. This next one is called foot, underscore R. Then we've got ball, underscore R. We've got ball, underscore end, underscore R. And if we were doing a really, really complete tutorial here on skeletons, we might add all the toes, metatarsals. We might also add the fingers, but we're not going to do that in this tutorial. It's just the basic skeleton. Okay, so we've got one side of it done, which is cool. Now what I want to do is go in and do the arm. So actually, no, first I am going to go and do the spine. So I'm going to go back to the pelvis because the spine comes from the pelvis, and I'm going to go around the back of the character now just so I can do it more easily. And I am now going to click 4 spine joints up the back of the character here, back of Dave. And because we're already on add and we're on the pelvis, we can now go here and we'll click on one there, one there, and then one there. All right, let's say that's good enough. We might take a little bit longer if we were doing this in a production project, but hopefully you'll get the point here. You can adjust these after the fact, but first thing I want to do again is just rename them. So we're going to do spine underscore 01. I'll copy that name, paste it in here, spine 02, paste it in there, spine 03, and paste it in again, spine 04. All right, so we got the spine. The next one I'm going to do is the neck. So we'll do a neck joint right there. And I'm going to go right to the base of the head here. I'm going to click on that for the head. And then the jaw is a funny one. I'm just going to put that right underneath here because I want it in the middle. And we'll just make sure that it's like in the middle of that kind of hinge point for the jaw. Say that's good enough. Might take a little bit more care there, but we can move the positions of these joints if we want to. So first thing again, yes, I'm going to name these. So I'm going to go neck, head, and jaw. And then for all of those, I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to zero out the X value there. Just make sure that they're all in a straight line. So we've got them all nice and tidy. All right, so those are all done. Next one I want to do is the arm. And for the arm, I'm going to come back to this joint right here. So the spine 04. First part of the arm is the clavicle. That's what allows you to hunch your shoulders like that. So that bone we're going to put on the pivot point of the clavicle right here. Next one I'm going to do is the shoulder. I'm going to put that one right there. And then the elbow. Let's put that one here. And then we'll just do one, not doing all the fingers. Just going to do one for the wrist, like that. All right. So there we have our skeleton. Looks pretty good. Bad names again. So I'm going to go in here and do clavicle underscore R for that one. This one is going to be upper arm underscore R. Make sure you copy these names right. And lower arm underscore R, and then hand underscore R. As long as you follow these naming conventions, everything should be good. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to take the root or the pelvis here, and I'm going to come across to on the left-hand side here, and I'm going to say, hit the edit button, and then I'm going to hit this orient button. Now, what that's going to do is you can see all these joints here are not, you can see the little axis there, they're not facing down the joint chain, which is not going to make for good animation. I won't go fully in depth into the reasons why, but we really want to orient these joints, and there's now so many tools in here to be able to work with this stuff. There is a handy orient button. So if I hit the orient button, you'll see it's gone through the whole skeleton and automatically oriented those joints. So now they're all facing down the bone like that with the X. You can specify which axis if you want. Again, more than the scope of this tutorial to go into all of that. So there we have a nice oriented skeleton inside of Dave there. And as you can see, we've only got half the skeleton done. But there's a nice tool in here to help us with the other side. So we don't have to go through that whole process again. Because this is a symmetrical character, we can select our clavicle joint and then go to the left here and hit mirror. As you'll see, there's now a one on the other side on the left, and it's nicely done all our work for us and renamed all of those joints because the settings over here used the naming convention _L and _R. And we're going to do the same thing for the thigh here. We're going to hit mirror. And now we've got a full skeleton for Dave. So he's all good to go. I'm going to hit accept. It's going to take a second because this is now kind of baking the asset. So now that's done, you can always hit save if you like, just to be sure. Make sure all your assets are good. Hit a quick save all because I can see one down there is not saved. One of the components. All right. So we have a character. We have Dave with a skeleton inside, and I am now going to do what's called binding. And binding is literally making the mesh on the outside of the character stick to the skeleton. So when you move the skeleton, the mesh moves as well. And this is going to create what's called skin weights. Interesting with a character with no skin, but the skin concept really is that you're, again, binding each one of these points in the skeleton to the mesh, so that when you rotate a joint, it rotates the bit of the mesh that you want with it. There's a little bit of work to do to make that a good relationship, but off the bat, we can do a very quick one here. We're going to hit bind skin, and as you can see, it's all blue. But if I select one of the joints here, you can now see that the color there shows you the relationship for that one joint. So there's our clavicle, and you can see it doing a pretty decent job of figuring out which bits of the mesh to move with that joint. It's not doing a perfect job, but it's not terrible. You know, we're gonna show you in a bit how to clean that up, but I'm gonna say accept. For this part of the tutorial, we're gonna say this is pretty much done. We've taken a character, we have given it a skeleton, we have made that skeleton nice and tidy and oriented and named properly, and we've now bound that skeleton to the mesh. So if I was to now select one of these bones and rotate it, you'll see I can rotate the mesh with the skeleton. You'll also see it rotating a bit of the rib cage, and that's what I was talking about just now with that skin weight work that we will show you how to do. I keep saying we, it's just me here. Anyway, I will show you how to do that in a bit. But for this part of the process, we're going to say this is kind of done. We could take this character right now and drop it into our environment without anything else and start animating it from this point already. I'm going to show you in the next tutorial how to create a control rig over the top of this so that you can much more easily animate this character, create animation clips, and do all kinds of character work that used to take a really long time, but we're going to use this thing called the modular rig and show you how you can do all kinds of cool stuff with character animation and motion retargeting. You could do some of that right now, as I said, but that really takes it to the next level. So for this part, again, we have taken a mesh, we've added a skeleton to it, we've bound that skeleton to the mesh, and now we have a fully functional character that we can drop into our world. I'm going to hit save all again and say, yeah, hope you enjoyed this tutorial. This was how to either take a completely vanilla mesh and add a skeleton to it, or to take a character that is already got a skeleton in it, rip the skeleton out, and then create your own brand new one. And this is highlighting all of the skeletal mesh editing tools that now exist in Unreal Engine. I'm using 5.5.1 as of making this video. And next up, we're going to go through the control rig, the modular control rig specifically. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And please do like and subscribe if you'd like to see more of this kind of content. Look forward to seeing what you create.